Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with the next episode of my interview series. This is the series where I talk with people who do interesting and/or extraordinary things. Some of the people I've been talking to, yeah, exactly. Look to directly to my right. So a lot of people I've been talking to lately have been people in the comics book YouTube community because there's some really interesting people out there, and a lot of times all we know about them is their collection. We don't know too much about the person behind the collection. So that's what the series is for. So today I bring to you the man, the myth, the legend, Reggie of Regie Collects. Reggie, how you doing this fine day?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me on the show. I absolutely appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a long time coming, and I was very excited that you could get on there. Um, so we're going to be going over quite a bit of stuff today, a little bit of history behind the man who is Reggie, and a little bit about your comics, and then a little bit about life outside of that. So if you're ready, we'll go ahead and jump right in.
Let's do it.
And every now and then I'll say something hi to the chat or whatever. And if you have a question in the chat that maybe you don't know and you want to ask, I'll try to work it in there a little bit. So Perry, welcome to the stream. Good to have you as always. All right, so let's start something easy. Reggie Collects now has over 7,000 subs, man. I mean, just wrap your head around that. When I think I first started watching you, you were either under 1,000 or right at it, somewhere in that range somewhere. So incredible growth, which we'll get into in a little while. But before we get into YouTube, let's talk a little bit about you. Where did you grow up?
Detroit, Michigan, born and raised. Like as a kid, they told us if you ever get lost, if you ever something ever happens, you just do this. You tell them you're from there. Because Michigan is shaped like a mitten and Detroit is like right there. So that's how we were told as children to tell police where we belong. So from Detroit, Michigan, born and raised, basically on 7 Mile in Detroit, and then for high school, I was in Oak Park, Michigan.
All right, so as a young one, what kind of hobbies did you have? What kind of things did you do for fun before you got into comics, if
Mostly
there's
digging
anything?
in dirt, um, riding my bike. I mean, before comics, I mean, it was, I started collecting originally in like the junior high time frame. And so before that, man, it was just the normal stuff of being a kid, playing outside, playing with roly polies, playing with your buddies, riding bikes and all that kind of stuff. Normal kid stuff for sure.
Yeah, I got my start like when I was younger in sports cards, and then I did both at the same time. I had a huge fixation on sports cards and paraphernalia like that, and then comics kind of crept in there as well, all around junior high too. So it sounded like we had kind of a similar road, and then I
I
had two
never I
dual
never did the
obsessions.
sport card thing,
Yeah.
man. It was never my thing. I mean, before comics, I did a little bit of like Garbage Pail Kids, if you guys remember those things. So I had
Okay.
a folder of all the Garbage Pail Kids, and my mom probably still has this folder somewhere. But I think at one point I used to they were stickers, and I would stick them inside of this photo album, and then eventually I migrated away from that, but and then kind of into comics. But all the normal stuff. There was a thing that I talked about the other day, a bunch of 80s toys like GI Joe and all that crazy stuff from the 80s. I was big into all that stuff, but never really did sports cards, and sports in general was never really my thing, to be honest.
Well, I didn't play a whole lot of sports. I was a little bit undersized in high school and middle school. I played volleyball and all. That's the loser sport. But that's all I had left to me. I was a good jumper, so I played the net a
No,
lot. But
no, the loser sport was softball, bro, and that's what I did.
but we all grew out of that, right? So
Yeah.
I grew. I got into a much cooler thing, which was collecting comic books. That really made me popular. So
Are you sure?
yeah. Hey, before we get into it anymore, let me just say hi to a few more people in the chat. Comic Bad Musings, welcome, welcome. Hey, Gray Man, Graham, how's you doing? Good to see you. Biggie Shack, Biggie, welcome, welcome. Good to see you as always, my friend. Super Russ, coming at me from North Carolina. Good to see you, good to see you. Bubs, hello, hello. And Bubs did say the bowling team was pretty soft. I had a buddy who was on the golf and bowling team in high school, so
Oh,
he was just knocking the ladies off with a stick. You couldn't
that's
stop
a
it.
two-time winner.
So, all right, we got through some baseline stuff. So let's talk about what people really want to know. When did you start comic collecting? I know junior high is about that time, but let's get a little background on when that and how it got started.
Yeah, it was probably in like the early 90s, right, that I probably started collecting comics. I want to say that some of my I had some experience with comics before that. Like I remember some Incredible Hulk stuff, some Plastic Man stuff that I was kind of exposed to, and I don't remember honestly where or how I was exposed to it. But in the junior high time frame, I had some buddies that were big into comics, and so because they were into comics and because they were my friends, I got pulled into comics. And I used to spend all of my money. Every dollar that I had went towards a comic book back in those days, and it was just a really great way to kind of escape things. And not that I had a bad childhood, not by any stretch of the imagination, but everyone I think wants to be able to escape to something and allow their imagination to run wild, and that's kind of what comics did it for me. And it was things like back then I was into the X-Men, Spider-Man, anything mutant related I was kind of into, and the Incredible Hulk, which is a little bit of a surprise because that's not necessarily my character now. But back then, if you look at my collection, I actually have a healthy number of Incredible Hulk from back in the day.
Yeah, it was kind of similar for me. It was weird. My first start, I did a video on this ages ago. I should have had the book ready. I think my very first comic was like West Coast Avengers 17 or something. I got it in like Easter. There's a giant Easter egg. It was a plastic Easter egg. It had a bunch of loot in there, right? And it was in there. I still have it. I ripped the cover off that thing. That thing is a reader copy if there ever was one. That was my first one. But I didn't have another one for years after that. And I think my very next comics were I bought my best friend's Punisher War Journal number 2 and 3. And because I read them, I liked them. It's like, I want these. And I read the cover off those two. And from there on, I was just hooked. And it was all through to about 93 or 4 when I stopped collecting.
I think we're
So,
on a similar trajectory, man. That's when I kind of discovered girls and went to college and was like, oof, this comic book stuff is not the move.
well, I don't know if I just grew out of it too. And it wasn't, I still wasn't doing well with the ladies. But I mean, it was, I didn't have, I had more disposable income when I was a young teenager than I did when I left the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was too busy eating baked potatoes every day and and ramen noodles with no water, that sort of thing. But
brother. Been
so
there, done that.
it was priorities, right?
For
But yeah.
for me, it was Jessica.
Oh, well, see, at least you got that.
Jessica cured me of comic books.
I'll tell you what, especially back then, it was so hard to be a collector because there was just so much coming at you all at once. There were so many titles. Everything was a must-have. There's the stable of artists was never seen before or since probably, and it was pretty crazy. So
For me, I was very reserved back in those days, and I'm still an introvert, and I think people are very surprised by that. But I was an introvert, and I would go to the comic shop and I would literally just go in silently, kind of looking for books, the new books, and I would go up, I would pay, and then I would leave. There was no discussion, there was no interaction. Like if I was in the shop by myself without my buddies, I was just going in there to buy books. And I tell this story all the time on my channel that I've actually gone to cons when I was a kid. I would go to cons, and I don't think that I ever spoke to anybody the entire time that I was at the con. Right, the entire time that I was there, meeting Mark Bagley, Dale Keown, and some of these other people who have signed my comics, I never interacted with those people because I was so reserved that it just, when and how I grew up, children were seen and not heard. That was basically how I was raised. And so I kind of carried that mantra with me for a long time, and until I broke out of that later in life. So,
yeah, it was really kind of odd to be a collector back then because once again, that's something I hid. I actively hid being a collector back then
yep,
because in high school that would just ostracize me even further than I already was.
yep.
So it was difficult. So sometimes you see a kindred soul in the LCS, but usually I just kept to myself too in those things. I often talked to the guy behind the counter though, because that's where I got the latest scoop on what was
I
actually
think
going
they were
on.
just as awkward as I was.
Back then, that's what collected. So, but yeah, it was almost like you're walking to a adult bookstore. So you're kind of looking around to see
Yeah.
when Young is going to see you walking in this place. It was so bad how bad we got ostracized.
I tell people all this time, people will oftentimes say that comics are for children. But even when I was a child and was collecting comics, I never really saw other children in the comic shop or at the cons that I went to. It was always adult men that were in there buying comics, but comics are for kids. And I don't think that has ever really been true. I think that maybe adult to the point kind of hid that they were collectors, right? Which gave the perception that it was for children. But the reality is, has always, in my experience, been something very different from that.
I think the only time you ever see kids buying comic books would be either like in the grocery store that walk by the spinner rack and grab one there or something. Mom, I want that Archie, whatever. And then, or in the gas station when they used to have them
There
in
you
gas
go.
stations. But you never saw young kids in the
Mm-mm.
LCSs. It was always
Unless you were
boys.
with your buddies. You know,
Yeah.
and I actually had an opportunity to go back to the neighborhood that my original comic shop was in. It was in Ferndale, Michigan. And so when I was in Michigan, last year I actually drove from my old house to where the old comic shop was. And I remember on the 10-speed bike, me and my buddies making this ride every, maybe once a week, maybe every other week or something like that to the comic shop. And it was not a short ride, but if you wanted comics, my mother was not taking me. And so I had to figure it out myself. And a maroon colored 10-speed bike was my mode of transport for a very long time.
Yeah, we did a lot of riding too around the Orlando area, so we weren't allowed to ride the bus or anything. We didn't really have a bus, but so we just rode everywhere. But yeah, so the things that collectors would do. So just a rough guess. What do you think the size of your collection is nowadays?
Oof. Maybe around 7,000 books. If I had to put a number to it, I would probably say around 7,000 books.
Now, did you ever like have an inkling, even when you first started collecting, that you would have a collection that would rival basically the LCS that you used to go to and shop at when you were a kid? You know?
No, no. For most of my my early collecting years, my collection was really in like three long boxes. Right. It was technically two long boxes and a half long box, and the half was full of the stuff that I didn't like. And that's where all the garbage went to. But for most of my early stint with comics, it was basically three long boxes. And then I was out of the hobby like around the 93, 94 time frame. And I was back into the hobby in like 2005, 2006 for maybe a year or so. I bought a lot of books during that time. And the collection grew because I had a lot more disposable income. I didn't have kids, that kind of stuff. So the
Hmm.
collection grew a little bit. But it really exploded when I came back into the hobby in 2017, the beginning of 2018. That's when it really started to kind of balloon up, when I started to buy collections and add to it. But no, you even now, you don't really think about how large the collection is until someone asks you a question that prompts you to think about it. Because I probably have maybe another, now that I'm thinking, another 10 short boxes in the basement that are actually like giveaway books or
Hmm.
dollar books that I will move to someone else at some point. But the collection itself, the PC, is about 7,000 books.
Pretty impressive. And welcome, Jay Hood. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, it's. Do you find that your collecting has changed since your beginning days? Is it a little more selective now, or is it still just I like this whole run, I'm buying all of it?
Um, I think as a collector, potentially one's collection and preferences continue to change and evolve with time, right? The vast majority of my collection at one point in time was all new books. Very, very few older books at all. And I don't know why that was. I wish that back in the day when I was originally collecting, I had collected some of the Silver Age stuff when it was much, much cheaper. But most of my collection before was basically all new books. And then when I came back into the hobby in 2005, 2006, I was still mostly buying new books that I was seeing, like new Avengers and things like that were on the shelf. And it wasn't until I came back into the hobby that things started to shift a little bit, because I think, a little more thoughtful about what I was doing. And what I mean by that is that when I came back to the hobby in 2017, 2018, I had an opportunity to buy all of those books that I'd always wanted, right? And my eyes were
Hmm.
open to the possibility of being able to get those books. And so I started to buy them. And I started to go a little crazy with how much I was spending and how much I was buying. If there was a variant, and I was buying it. If it looked like it was sexy or going up in value, I bought it, right? And I tell people all the time, I got a little slab happy when I first came back into the hobby, because I'm like, these slabs are great. And so everything went into a slab. And I started to really then started to ask myself some questions around, what is my goal? What is my focus? What am I trying to accomplish with this collection? And it changed again. And it's probably changed several other times since the early part of 2018, as I've continued to buy more books and then evaluate whether those books made me happy, or to evaluate where I want my collection to go. Or I'm looking at the market and I'm asking myself, is this the right move for me to make based upon what I'm actually seeing? So I think evolution of one's preferences and evolution of one's collection is probably an ongoing thing. At least that's my belief.
Yeah, as a maybe older and wiser guy now, like I used to have more of the shotgun approach. I just bought basically everything that was even remotely interesting to me on the shelf. That's really what I could afford back then. I couldn't afford grails because everything was so grossly inflated, even back on newer stuff back in the '90s, and so it was just easier to buy it off the shelf. But yeah, now I'm a lot more selective in what I buy, and it'd be like I would definitely save for a grail now rather than just spec on 4 or 5 books. I'm just going to go with what I is a known property. So here's a question I know you probably get sick of hearing, and everyone gets asked this. Do you have 5 favorite books in your collection? You know
Um,
this is coming.
yeah, I mean, so I would say if I had to put 5 down, let me write these out because I will lose track. I will probably say ASM 1 is probably on there. Giant Size X-Men 1 is on there. ASM 50 is on there because it's a gorgeous cover signed by Stan Lee. That's probably on there. Let me see if I had to put another one on there. Maybe my Iron Man 7. And I say that because the Iron Man 7 is a book that it's the first, it's where he switches over from the old uniform to the red uniform. And I've
Hmm.
literally had that book in my collection since my very first collection. It was one of the oldest books I've ever had in my collection back then. And if I had to pick another, this is a tough one. I would throw in maybe X-Men 1. I would maybe throw in X-Men 1 because of the historical significance of it, because I love mutants, right? So I have
Hmm.
a little bit of a mutant thing going on, as well as Amazing Spider-Man. So those might be my 5.
Oh, that's a good list, though. I mean, you're right on it too. Like, notice those are all Marvel. Everybody, by the way, excellent choice.
So first, you should never be confused as to where my priorities are.
You're a wise man. I collected very little DC back then. I had some Batman stuff, and that wasn't too much else. But I did more Dark Horse than I did
Ba-
DC.
Batman's not DC. Batman's
He's just
Batman.
Universal. So, do you read a lot of the comics that you buy, or you just mostly collect?
Oh, I read, brother.
Yeah,
I
I
read.
think I've
And
read
a
every
lot of
book in
times
your collection.
I will wait to buy the book before I read the book because I want to have it in the collection to read it versus reading it digitally. Do doubles count? Yes, they do. Um, but yeah, I read a lot of what I buy. And then I also read a lot of books, and then I buy the books.
Hmm.
Right. Like if I read something digitally, I'm like, that's a really good book. I will go buy it because I liked it and want it in the collection.
Now, since you do read your books, is there like one book that's ever particularly stuck out to you that's kind of emotionally moving for you that really kind of just hits you in the feels? Any book like that out there that stands out?
Brother, there's a lot of them, man. If anyone hasn't read God Country, man, God Country will get you. It will get you. And I was not expecting the ending of God Country. And this is a new book, right? Got to the end, and like a tear fell from my eye. Like it was honestly a really good book. And so if you haven't read that, I say read that. There is another the Amazing Spider-Man book, and I want to say that it's like 35 or maybe 33. I can never remember. It's one where he is trapped under the machine work. And he's been fighting Doc Ock in the sewer, and he's trapped under the machines, and he's got the medicine there for Aunt May, and he's trying to muster his wherewithal to free himself in order to get back to his family.
Hmm.
And that's another book that has a really strong emotional tie for me. It has a lot of morality in it, in that a man never gives up, a man never quits, a man continues to push even when the odds are stacked against him to do what is right for his family. And that is another book that really resonates with me. So those are two that readily come to mind for me.
Good picks, good picks. Yeah, actually, one of mine's actually a Spider-Man book, and I'm not really a big Spider-Man guy, but ASM
This interview's
248.
over.
Yep, yep. I know. Hey, at least it balances out with the DC thing, right? All right, so, but
Go ahead.
yeah, it was boy kid who collects Spider-Man. I like that story so much. It's kind of a tearjerker. So and that kind of gets back to what we talked about earlier. People thinking that comics are just a medium for kids. There's some really adult themes that go on in it, and a lot of these are classical writers that move over to comic books. So they just gotta, I don't know, they gotta get that misconception out of their head.
I don't think that misconception honestly will ever go anywhere. I really don't. It's funny pages. So I think that inherently there is something in there that says, when I became a man, I put away my childish things. And so there is this belief that because comics are illustrations, that they are indeed childish things. And I don't think that people really look beyond the surface to really look at the morality and the lessons that are embedded into comics to really appreciate that they are not for children, right? They look at them and they assume that they know what it's about, when if they took the time, they would realize just how amazing comic books are. And that's why people try to call them graphic novels to like dress it up. It is what it is. I don't think that it will ever gain universal acceptance. I think that the movies that are out are helping. They are helping with some of the acceptability of someone basically acknowledging that they know about comics, but I don't know if the misperception will ever go away, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's like I noticed the change in me was when I became a man. I didn't put away childish things. I understood them. It's like
Mm.
I didn't just look for the fights and the explosions in the book anymore. I was actually reading these books and kind of getting more out of them as I had more understanding, as an adult. So I don't know. It's just a weird metamorphosis. And so speaking of writing, we can kind of get into something else a little more esoteric here. Uh, if you could have one comic made for you, who would you have write it and who would you have illustrate it?
Oh man. So off the top of my head, like I really like what like Donnie Cates and Jonathan Hickman are doing right now. I think that they are both really fantastic writers. I think that Jonathan Hickman has a weight. He has a weight to his writing that I appreciate. And if you read those interstitial pages that he has in the Dawn of X titles, there is a weight to those things. There is some thoughts that he invested in, and I enjoy that. So I would probably have him do it. Just a few moments ago, I was actually live on my own channel, and I was looking at a piece of artwork from Scott Williams that really spoke to me. It was a cover that he is doing for X Factor #1, and it was gorgeous. But if it were me, if I had to have one artist do it, it would probably be Jim Lee, because I like Jim Lee, right? I think that my perception of him is that he is a warm, caring individual, right? And I may be reading into it, but that is my perception of him, that he is actually a really nice person, but he's also a really fantastic artist. And I have been a fan of Jim Lee's work since I was a kid, and I continue to be a fan of his even now. So Jonathan Hickman from a writing perspective, and Jim Lee from an art perspective on a Marvel book.
Excellent choices. I mean,
Regie Collects exclusive variant Marvel book.
it's hard to go wrong there. And I'll tell you what, and I'm not throwing shade to any other artists. You hear horror stories all the time about like Liefeld or McFarlane. They're very polarizing characters with people. I never hear anything bad about Jim Lee.
Nope.
So I mean, and his art is just stupendous. So I mean,
Nope.
it's hard to go wrong there. He does seem like a pretty nice guy.
You
I know Ron
don't
Lim's real nice too, but
And it's hard not to have somebody say something negative, right? But
yeah,
I've never heard a negative story about Jim Lee. People may not like his representation, right? Right. But you will never, at least I haven't heard someone say he's a bad person, or he treated me poorly, or I went up to meet him and he did not like speak to me, right? And the thing is, at a certain point, you want to like people. You want to like the creators that are creating the works for you. And he is a person that I like. And at one point I hope to be able to meet. So we will see.
well, one day keep the dream alive, right? Hey,
Brother.
got
Brother,
some got some new people in the chat. Comics for Thomas, welcome, welcome. Disco, hey, I need to get with you. We were supposed to do an interview as well. Good to see you, Disco. Burke Nasty is here in the house, right? Let's see, who else do we got? Anyone else? I think that's everyone new. So
can we throw the Burke Nasty comment up there?
let's see which one.
This guy with the Power
Bam.
This guy with the Power Rangers, man.
He knows what he likes. Man. He must be a child of the '90s.
And you have to respect that. You have to respect somebody that is like, this is my jam, you know? And that's his jam, and I respect it. Every time I see him, I think of Power Rangers. I see Power Rangers, like I saw this really funky error variant in one of my comic shops. I immediately thought of Burke, right? Because it was like, this guy would appreciate that, you know?
Well, it's it's good. It's all like Pavlovian response here now to people. It's good. Okay, I don't know who you can think about. Maybe the Juggernaut eventually, but if it's up there long enough. So getting onto that, let's talk a little more pragmatic. And for those who have families out there, do you consider comics a good hobby for newbies, for someone just getting into something new? They might not know anything about comics, but they just want to start collecting something. Would you recommend them to collect comics?
I do. And in fact, if you think about my channel is really geared to a very wide range of people, right? The channel is really set up for people that are new to the hobby, those that are newly returning to the hobby, as well as seasoned collectors. And so if you think about the content that I release on my channel, I'm constantly talking to basically those three people all the time. And I think that each one of them gets a little something out of it. At least that is my belief. And I think that that is part of the reason why the channel has grown the way that it has, is because I'm very purposeful in the type of content that I create, and I create it to actually fill a gap. So if you're asking me whether comics is a good thing for people, I would say absolutely. And my channel is a great place to start to onboard oneself to this hobby of comics, which is a fantastic hobby. Especially now. Now is a fantastic time to be in comics.
It's so easy to collect now. That's the thing. It's almost a dangerous hobby because it's so easy, but it's one click. Any book you want basically is one click, 2 clicks away. So I think it's a good hobby too, because it's much easier to get a better price nowadays. You're not just going to get gouged because there's only one copy in the whole tri-state area. It's like, I think it's a really good one too. You have to be careful. I always warn people going in, if they ever want to get into it, it's like, hey man, you can never collect everything. Just get that out of your head right now. So it's a little dangerous, but I think it's a great one too.
And that's one of the things that I encourage people to do on the channel, is to think about, what are you trying to collect, right? What makes you happy? What is your goal for your collection? And if you can define what your goal is or what your objective is, then it allows you to have a framework in which to actually make decisions about what you buy. Right. And again, the content that I create is for a lot of different people. When I first came back into this hobby, I was slab happy and I was variant happy. If it moved, I slabbed it. And if it looked good, I bought it. That is what I did. And so many other people do that. But after a while, you start to, I think if you start to sit down and think, you will start to evaluate, does this thing that I just bought make me happy? Does this thing that I bought fulfill some kind of goal that is bigger than just this book, right? Did I even read the book? That's a great sign right there. Did I even read the book? And if I read it, did I enjoy it? If I didn't, then I should not have bought it. And so that's why I was saying before, if you're in this hobby, it's this thing of constant evolution. And it's about asking yourself, am I doing the right thing to make myself happy? Am I doing the right thing for my collection? Am I spending my hard-earned money wisely? And if you can't answer those questions, then you might need to sit down and think about it. Because the last thing you want anybody to do, especially a new person, is to come in and try to buy everything and get themselves into a hole, or to buy things with bad information and realize that they made a mistake, and then they get burned out and they leave the hobby. That is part of what I try to address on the channel by saying, stop and think about what you're doing before you do it. But make mistakes, because we all do. Just learn from them and get a little bit better.
Yeah, it's an interesting hobby in that it can appeal to a couple different kinds of people. It can appeal to the pure speculator, to one who wants to flip books, but I think it has the best appeal to the personalized collector. Hey, I want to read this book and save it for money later on. So I get a double thing. I get enjoyment out of this book of having it. It's the intrinsic value of just possessing it. I got bragging rights. And then later on down the road, I can give it to my kids, whatever. It's just going to appreciate. It's not going to depreciate for the most part, unless you're a 90s collector like I was. But
I actually did a survey via the channel where I kind of wanted to dig into the overlap that exists between collectors and speculators. And there's a lot of belief that that there are a lot of speculators, that there's just rampant speculation. And even though my sample size was only, I want to say it was like 200 people, like 201 people, there was a healthy amount of overlap between those that collect and read comics and those that speculate on comics as well. And there was a very small subset of people that actually collect. I mean, just do it for purely speculation. And yes, there is a little bit of bias there with my channel, but as I mentioned, my channel appeals to a wide range of people. But if you were to do that on a true spec channel, then you could see a swing the other way with a lot more speculation. But again, I feel like there is a nice amount of overlap, a healthy amount of overlap between those that buy comics for the enjoyment of them, whether it be to read them or to collect them, because that's its own enjoyment. Those that just love the art, and those group that also will speculate on that very comic. I'm going to buy it, I'm going to read it, I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm also going to buy it because I believe that this one will go up in value. There seems to be a nice amount of overlap between those two groups.
Well, speaking of something that can affect speculation, I always ask this of people who are in the know. What is your opinion on the Marvel or the MCU and the DCU movies that are out there? Do you think they are good for the industry, or do you think they are a completely separate entity and bear no discussion in like just comic book talks?
Anybody that saw the Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk back in the day knows just how special the times are that we are in right now. Lou Ferrigno with the green body paint was not a good look.
No, good wig,
it was
though.
not a good look, man. And I think that the times that we are in right now are, in my opinion, a fantastic time, because we get to read about these characters in the pages of the comics, and then we actually get to go to a theater with friends, with family, and with strangers and see these characters come to life on the big screen. And some say that that's a bad thing because of the influence of these movies on the values of comics. And you know, with anything in life, there is an upside and a bad side and a downside. And I personally try to look at the upside of things. And I revel in the fact that there are a lot of new comics that are coming out that are really fantastically written. There are lots of movies that are coming out that are well done, and that are potentially also drawing in an additional group of people into the hobby. At a minimum, these movies are so well done that they bring in a tremendous amount of money into the organizations that create these comics for us. So I personally think that there is more positive than there is negative associated with the movies that are actually coming out.
It's so funny now because I'll have friends and family, because I know I used to collect comics. They will come and they'll see some, after the credits scene or whatever. They don't know who the character is. So they ask me, what's going on with this? What's going to happen? And I try not to tell them, because I don't know. They're going to change it for the movies probably. But I mean, this is what it was back in the day. So it's weird. It's like all of a sudden you have a treasure trove of knowledge, and you're no longer ostracized for knowing this stuff. Now you're almost applauded for it,
You should say, sit down upon my knee and let me school you.
Listen, young Padawan, here's how it's going to go. Yep. But,
I started to make the joke, but I was like, I'm gonna let somebody else get that one. Well done.
Biggie, of course, had to bring that up. And we'll talk actually a little bit about bodybuilding later on. Yes, Lou was fairly underappreciated.
Well, he was only underappreciated within the respect of the Australian oak, who used to just suck up all the air in the room, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Serge Nubret, I thought blew him away a lot of times, but that's another story. But yeah, he was a giant. He was over 300, I think 20 pounds on stage, like the 90s.
He's a big boy, man. I mean, he's also tall, God, He's a big guy. I mean, there's shorter bodybuilders, I mean, that are 300 pounds now, but I don't know that they carry it as aesthetically as Lou did. I think he carries it incredibly well.
No, yeah. He was, well, anyway, we won't get into that too much, but actually, Biggie might have a question here for you. Right up on their screen. Never heard your opinion about Arnold's bodybuilding career.
I'm jealous of it. I would need to know more specifically, like what he's alluding to there. But I mean, the thing is that, what was he the best bodybuilder? I would, it's tough. The challenge is that bodybuilding like comic book grading, is subjective, right? It is subjective. And I think that you can look at a bodybuilder in a photo and you can see one thing and they look great, but then you see that same bodybuilder on a stage and it's different. You see that same bodybuilder on a stage next to another bodybuilder, and each one of those things changes how that bodybuilder actually shows up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have actually sat in the judges area and watched competitors on the stage that will look dramatically different as they are backstage versus on stage by themselves versus in a lineup doing a pose down with people. And so it's tough. It's tough because I was never in the audience when Arnold was on stage. You know what I'm saying? But bodybuilding is very much a subjective sport. It is about the aesthetics and what is pleasing to those judges that are in the audience at that time, as they look at all the competitors on stage. So Arnold was a big man. He was a big man with lots of wins. So
I'll tell you, and like I said, we'll get off the subject here. I think Arnold's best look ever was 74, and he ran unopposed that year. He was completely by himself up there, but he was just shredded to the bone. His legs looked amazing. He always gets flack for his legs, but yeah. But anyway,
what is he, 6'2" or something like
he's
that?
like 6'2", 6'3",
Yeah.
so he's this long
But
guy.
it's hard for tall people to put muscle on that way.
Huh.
But the dude's upper body was just next level.
Oh
You
man,
know?
he's just so. And I think that's part of Lou's a little bit of, I hate to say problem, but he was just had such a big frame. It's hard to pack that much muscle on there.
It's hard to feel that out. You can have two people that are basically, a foot, I'm making this up, like a foot height difference, weigh the exact same. That shorter guy will look massive compared to the taller guy because the limbs are longer. It's meat that is stretched out further than the little compact body, I've competed against guys that are on stage at 170 pounds. I'm 200 pounds and they look bigger than me because they're tiny. They're tiny people and I'm 6 feet. So it's tough when you're bigger. Your range of motion to do a squat is dramatic, right? Versus a shorter person who is smaller, has, denser bones and all that kind of stuff. It's tough. It's tough.
Yep. That's why you don't see lots of tall guys winning this stuff anymore. I mean, they're mostly 5'10", I think, is the magic number nowadays, and
or shorter.
I was actually going to bring up some bodybuilding stuff later, but I guess we're already into it. Let's see.
Oh, we can keep going with the other stuff, man. I'm good either way, brother.
We'll get back to it then. But anyway, that was funny that people asked. Okay, so where was okay, so we're gonna kind of ease out of the comics just a little bit. So what got you into the YouTube game itself? I mean, what said, Reggie, I need to go out and film?
So I used to sit and when I came back into the hobby at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I used to sit every morning and I would have breakfast. And while I was having my breakfast, I would sit there and watch like Sell My Comics and Jim's Comics and Silver Age Dave and sometimes ETA Nick and Reaper Tate and Jim Mint. I don't really own statues. I mean, there's one behind me, but that was an A-OK. But I would sit there and watch Jim Mint and I would watch these guys and it looked like they were having so much fun talking about comics. And for much of my comic book history, I did it in isolation, kind of what we've been talking about. I had a couple of friends that were into it, but by and large, the vast majority of it was in isolation. And so when I watched these guys on camera, they were having a lot of fun. I'm like, well, maybe I should do a YouTube video too, so I can actually engage with people out there. And I decided one day I got a light from my wife's photo set, and I got an iPad and I set it up and I talked to the camera, and I probably mispronounced just about every word because I had never even said many of the words out loud, like Galactus. I never said that word out loud before. I was literally on camera saying it, but these guys were having a lot of fun. That inspired me to set up a camera, record a video. That video was watched, 25 times. And I was like, that's cool. Let's do another. And it kind of snowballed from there, man. It was just about reaching out and trying to enjoy the hobby the way that other YouTubers seem to be enjoying it.
I like your how-to videos. I watched your UV film the other day, UV proofing your room. That was really, I like stuff like that. I do stuff like that myself. But
yep.
So what were your first videos like? I mean, do you ever look back upon them and critique them, or how
Oh,
different
sweet,
is your channel now as compared to what it was then?
sweet Christmas, brother. I can't watch that stuff, man. I can't. I can't. It's tough. What was really cool is one of my subscribers, I think it was Ariel. He actually put together a montage of the evolution of my channel over time. And it was basically like, the little thumbnails of basically my head, but you could see the evolution of the channel in terms of like the lighting and things like that would change, and it was really cool to see. And I've gone back and watched some of those videos. Some of them are rougher than others. Some of them you can see the makings of where the channel is now in some of those earlier ones. The bits and pieces of it were there,
Hmm.
and you watch and you're like, oh, that's when I started doing that. Or, oh, I wonder why I do that now, because I started doing that, 2 years ago or whatever. But it's cool. I don't spend a lot of time watching the old content. I tend to go back a year maybe to reference content for people, where people are like, hey, do you have a video on this? I'll go back like a year or so and send them some of that stuff. The older stuff, I don't really touch that stuff. And I definitely don't critique it. It's done. What's done is done. And it makes me, a little uncomfortable to see me make mistakes, and so I try not to watch the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, about the only time I revisit my older stuff is like if a comment comes up on them, I go back and I try to answer every comment that hits.
Yes,
So, um,
but even still, I'm like, please don't ask comments or make comments, because then I have to watch it, and I don't want to.
I didn't like my sound, I didn't like my camera and all that, but
Brother, I
it
have
is what it is.
like 911 videos. That's a lot of content.
Yeah, I think I'm at 600 or so myself. But yeah, you got a ton to get
As my
through.
wife says, that's a lot of you talking. That's what she says to me.
Well, that's a lot of me talking. You don't have to hear. So,
I am not going to use that response.
oh man, well, just keep it in your back pocket just in case. But so speaking of subjective, I mean, why do you think that your channel is like basically one of the fastest growing comic book related channels on YouTube?
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I'll take your word for it.
I mean, between you, like JLS, Bueller, and all that, I think you guys have been like the fastest three growing YouTube channels, at least as far as like the
Bueller who?
internal comics community.
Bueller
Comics with
who?
Bueller. Yeah, yeah. Who's this Bueller guy?
I'm teasing. I'm teasing. I think there's a couple of things, and I was just talking about this on the channel when I did a live stream a short while ago. Is that I think that there is an exchange of value that happens. If somebody watches my videos, they are giving me their time. And what I try to give them in return is something of equal or greater value. And that value comes in the form of entertainment in some ways. For me, positivity. It comes in the way of information. It comes in the way of just I'm trying to put my best into the content that I create, and have someone watch that video and walk away saying, I learned something, I was entertained, I heard something I never knew before, or this guy made me think about something that I've never thought about before, right? To me, that is what it's about, so I think that's part of it. I try to be genuine with the things that I do and I say. I don't tell people what to think. I give people things to think about and allow them to decide what is in their best interest. So I treat people with respect. We don't always agree on my channel, but we do maintain a certain amount of civility. I would honestly say one of the other big things that has contributed to, in my belief, the success of my channel, if you want to call it that, is the group of people that surround the channel. There are some people that don't miss a live stream, that don't miss a video. They will welcome somebody to the live stream before I even see the person's comment. There are some people like Tina and like Randy Resnake and Backseat Driver, Lee Atkins. These are Johnny Future. These are people that I talk with offline and that support the channel while we're online, and they have surrounded the channel with I think like a warmth that makes people feel welcome when they join. And anything that is welcoming will potentially be something that people stick with. So hopefully that answers the question.
Well, like I said, it's kind of a subjective question, but I mean, there has to be something that separates you from other people. And I mean, you're obviously doing whatever you're doing. You're doing very well because your channel's growing almost
Yeah.
exponentially. It's amazing. Hey, I got
I
some new
can
people in the
let me
chat.
add a couple of things if I might. So I'm also constantly trying to improve the quality of the content, both in terms of what goes into it, as well as the sound and the lighting and the production and all of those things. So oftentimes I see channels where I can't hear the person or I can't
Hmm.
see them. And if someone can't hear or see you, that's a problem, And so I think that is another thing that I think has helped is I'm constantly investing back into the channel, and I'm talking time and money back into the channel to make things better. I recently upgraded my thumbnails, and I had somebody recently join the channel that was like, as soon as I saw your thumbnail, I had to click on it because it just drew my attention. And I created that thumbnail because of a negative comment from another subscriber. Another subscriber gave me some negative feedback on my thumbnails, which prompted me, first it was hard to hear, but it made me look at that and ask myself, can I do better?
Hmm.
And that's when I actually did better. So to something you and I both have said, I read and respond to probably 95% of comments that are left on my videos. And I do it because I need to know what people are thinking and how the video is landing on people. Even if it's negative, it's harmful or hurtful for me to hear it, but I have to hear it because in hearing of that, I can actually do better. And so I read the comments, I respond to the comments. And again, it goes back to what I was saying about the exchange of value. If you take the time to watch my video and comment on my video, the least that I can do is to say thank you or to acknowledge whatever it is that you said, whether I like it or not. I at least acknowledge it. And I think that all of these things and many other things that I could probably mention are going into why the channel is performing the way that it is. And I think we're adding roughly 300 and some odd people a month, which is good, but I look at the reason I'm always like, is that good or bad, right? Is I look at channels that are much larger than mine, right? There are other people that I've already mentioned on this channel have channels much larger than mine. And I'm like, am I doing good in comparison to them? I don't know. I'm just doing the best that I can do in it. And people seem to appreciate it, which is fantastic.
I did a video actually like 6 months ago, and I specifically asked my viewers to critique my channel. I said, "Tell me what I need to do better because I'm trying to grow subs. I want it to look better for you guys. I don't want to put out a substandard product if I can help it." Had a lot of great input, and I've changed a ton of stuff on the channel since then.
Was there a lot of negativity as well?
No, I mean not that much, but I was asking for negativity. He's like, "Give it to me," So
It's hard for me to hear, man. I'm gonna be
yeah,
honest. It's hard for me,
no one wants to hear it, but
No, but you because you take pride in what you do, and for me, like I relive the mistakes. Like if I make a mistake, if I say a word incorrectly, if I'm watching it back, right? If I'm watching it back and I hear like, oh, I didn't say that clearly, or I made a mistake here, it bothers me. And then if someone says it, yeah, you messed up on that, it really gets to me. But I think that you have to hear the good with the bad because it keeps you honest. And I think that there's a lot that can be learned. And I applaud you for being receptive to criticism and feedback because it takes a lot to make oneself vulnerable to hearing that because you don't know what you're going to hear. But it's through sometimes hearing those things that you can actually get better.
there's a pretty famous chess grandmaster who said, "I learned a lot more in all of my defeats than I ever learned in my wins." Because I mean, I don't know, and it's just I don't know, I always stuck with me. Hey, we got some new
It's
people in
because
the
it's the
chat, by the
truth.
way. It is true. I mean, it's easier not to hear bad things, but you never improve. Hey,
Comics on my mind. I see you, brother. How you
yeah,
doing?
yeah, he's in there. Hobby's in here. We got some Australia action with Werewolf. Welcome, welcome. Who else we got? Crazy Guy Comic. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. So we're done with comics for just a little bit here. Forget them. What other hobbies do you have?
Raising children.
It's an important one.
That's my hobby. My goal is to raise the two best, well-rounded, healthy, physically and mentally humans that I can possibly raise. That is a goal. I'm a homeowner, so I spend a lot of time doing home improvement projects. Spend a lot of money, a lot of time at the Home Depots and making things better for this house. But I don't collect a whole lot. I don't collect a whole lot outside of comics, right? My time is really spent between, you know, maintaining the house, maintaining the channel, maintaining a healthy relationship with my wife, trying to raise my children, and then my job. Right? That's my time. You know.
Yeah. Speaking of project, I was on my roof like an hour before I got done talking to you. We had a huge storm come through last night, ripped a bunch of fascia off,
Yep.
the trim on my fascia, and I had to go nail that back up there with a neighbor. So
It never ends, brother.
it never ends.
Home ownership, it never ends.
You know, ours is a senior in high school
That's
too,
what,
so parenting never
what
ends
you say?
either.
What was the last thing you said?
Oh, I said, yeah, our little one's a senior in high school too, so parenting never ends either.
Oh man, you were almost at the end. What does that feel like?
It's weird, man. It's weird. It's expensive. That senior gets expensive. I'll tell you that. I need $200 here. I need $150 there. You know,
I
but
have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old brother, and every time I see a half-eaten apple go into the trash, I die a little inside because I'm like, can we trim that so you can finish eating that? You know,
yeah,
they haven't yet discovered the dip into my pocket thing like you were just talking about, but I
hmm
know that it's coming. I know it's coming.
you know, it's so incredibly satisfying to sit there and talk about her future career now. We're talking about colleges. She's going to college next year, and
Mm,
we sit there and actually have the conversations about what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And
mm.
let's talk about the pluses and minuses. You know, we can talk about money. It's cool that you can talk about all these adult things now, and it's so nice to see that transformation from that little girl who used to race to the bus stop back and forth to, you know, a nice growing young woman. So
Because you invested the time, brother. You invested the time. I mean, I sit and have a conversation with my 5-year-old, and I'm like, man, this is cool. It is cool. Like I can actually talk to you like a person. You know what I'm saying? It is as a parent, it is a rewarding thing when they start to kind of do their thing. You know, when my boy looks at me and he's like, Dad, I got it. I'm like, first, that's mean. But all right, you got it. Go ahead. You know, he started pouring his own juice into his cup because he wanted a certain cup. And I'm like, hey, figure it out. He went, poured it, and was so pleased with himself. I'm like, hey, that's what it's about, man. You know, 2 in college. Poor, no wonder your name is Poor Mike.
yep, enjoy that. Stay in that poorhouse, man.
Whew,
Ours
whew.
get mostly a full ride, but man, it's something, man.
That's brutal, brother. That's brutal.
So we talked a little bit about YouTube earlier. How much do you think you have invested money wise into the YouTube game right now between microphones and cameras and softwares, all that kind of stuff?
Not much. I don't think I have much. I mean, I use a couple of lights here in the room. I paid $20 for the lights. The iPad is stolen from my wife, so that helps. She bought me the laptop that I use for editing. It's a really nice laptop, so that was free, right? No, I paid for that. And then I have a microphone here that I spent a few $100 on, so not a whole lot. I think the vast majority of the cost for my channel goes into the time that I spend, whether it be thinking about videos, recording videos, editing videos, or responding to inquiries that have come into me via the channel, my Instagram, my website, the Twitter machine, or email, right? I think that, for me, there isn't a whole lot of dollars in it, but it's a lot of time. I spend a lot of time talking to people literally all day, every day. But that's not a bad thing, right? If you think about why I started doing this, I started doing the channel originally to connect with the comic book community and to have some fun. And that's exactly what I do. I literally talk to people all around the world every day about comics, and that's cool.
Well, you got off cheaper than me. I got around $2,500 invested in YouTube so far. I'm waiting for
Are
some
you
return on
serious?
investment
I need
eventually.
to be like, what, man? What do you have over there, brother?
Well, thing of this, I do a lot of stuff out in the field, like I do interviews and stuff. So I got a couple different cameras, and I got lots of umbrella lighting, and this mic here is like $150, and I got webcams, and it's just software. It just goes on and on. But I basically got everything I need, so when I grow bigger, I don't have to really buy too much else. So
Yeah,
I just
I've
I front
taken a
loaded it.
slightly different approach. I upgrade as I go. All right, my first microphone was a $19 microphone, lapel mic that I got from Amazon. right? And I used it and I used it until it didn't work anymore. And then I was like, I guess I need a new one, right? And then I went out and got this one, this Apogee mic for Max, and it was expensive. It's like this big, and it is expensive. But that was probably the most expensive thing that I bought. I mean, a subscriber actually gave me this boom arm. They actually bought the boom arm for me and sent it to me.
Nice.
I have again, one of the things that has made the channel successful are the people that surround the channel. So very thankful. I think it was Vika that actually picked this up for me, this boom arm. So I'm very appreciative of that. But yeah, most of the stuff that I have, man, has been like hand-me-down stuff. I've had it from another project, or my wife had it and I repurposed it. And that's kind of helped me to keep my costs down.
That's pretty sweet. I bought these a couple weeks ago. This is wireless lapel mics, so I mean, it's always something. I'm always getting a
Goodness,
little
that's nice.
gadget. I got two of them, so when I do interviews, then I don't have to have them wired up. I like to
Yeah.
walk around the facilities because I got some other things I want to be doing.
Brother,
And
I'm
so
gonna have to call you because I've actually thought about doing some of that stuff, and I'm like, I don't know where to begin. So I may have to call you to have a conversation about some of that stuff.
just let me know. I'm a gearhead, man. So
That's all right. I mean, literally, bro, I tell you, I literally, people are always like, well, what do you use? All the stuff that I use is basic stuff. It's all basic stuff. Everything that goes into my channel, honestly, is I try to put some energy and some excitement into it. And I try to put in good content, but a lot of the stuff that I use here in the room is like basic stuff, couple of bucks here and there, nothing crazy.
yeah, I mean, people as good as phones are, people can just do it mostly on a phone nowadays. And I tell
Yes,
people who are starting out, it's like, hey, don't go hog wild until you think you really want to do this.
brother, this thing
Yeah,
shoots in 4K.
I know it's better than my webcam.
It shoots in 4K. It is, I mean, it is incredible, and I have a little gyro handheld thing that I carry. And the gyro, I put my iPhone in there, and that's how I shoot videos on the fly. And that's it.
So we're getting close to the end here, but so your guy puts out a lot of content. Does it ever get to be a chore to do YouTube? Is there ever a time he's like, oh man, I did not want to shoot a video today? Is it become like a second job to you?
So the way that I prevent the burnout is that I go in spurts. I haven't filmed one video this week. Haven't filmed one, not one video has been filmed this week. The next 2 weeks of videos are already in the can. And so what I do is I go in spurts that allows me to kind of recharge myself. I go in spurts of recording a lot, thinking about videos. I capture them and then I noodle them for a couple of days. Well, what do I want to say and how do I want to structure it? If I say this, then I want to go here, right? So I'm organizing it in my head the same way as a journalist I used to for an article. And so I go through this phase of thinking about content to basically recording that content. And then I go into editing that content and then scheduling it out. But that's a cycle. That's a cycle that I go through. And so right now, again, I haven't recorded one single video this week. The next 2 weeks are already done. So probably this weekend, I will start to record a couple of things that I'm already thinking about and get those ready for week 3 as next week is about to roll out. And that allows me to constantly recharge myself so that I do not feel that burnout. Because it's easy to feel that way where it is a second job. I don't feel that way because of how I've organized the channel and the content to actually work for me.
Yeah, it's I gotta take every now and then, every couple months, I'll take like a week or two off. I took like almost 2 weeks off before I put out like 2 videos, and some of that was pre-recorded because I just gotta recharge the battery sometimes, man. Because I gotta go home, I got a full-time job, family, and all that, and then I gotta go sit in the editing chair for 4 hours or whatever. It can burn you out, man. So it's like,
So with me, a lot of times I can do a video in one take. I can sit down and I can literally talk for 20 minutes and just that's a video, and I edit it, I slice it up, and then I'm done. So what I've tried to do is because of, again, if you think about the type of videos that I create and the people that I create them for, there are different levels of effort that it takes. Like I just did a video, I finished up. The video took me 2 hours to edit. It didn't take me that long to film. It took me a couple of hours to research and a couple of hours to edit it. But then I also can film one video in 15 minutes and be done with it, right? So I constantly have this flow of content that is in depth and very detailed, and some of it that is just surface and fun. And so I constantly keep that going. And again, so it doesn't feel like this heavy lift for me.
Yeah, it's rough. Like I said, I could shoot like a 5-minute segment on the green screen or something, or just on separate footage. But then I go to sit in the editing chair, and I'll be there for 4 hours on that 15-minute clip. So it's like a lot of people don't see that it can be very time consuming depending on how really in depth you want to get on the channel. So it's kind of a
Oh,
warning out there to anyone who's think about getting to the game. Just be prepared
it,
for that. But
it can definitely be time consuming. That it can be.
so kind of once it's getting here toward the end, is there been anyone in your life that's been particularly inspiring to you? It made you want to achieve. I mean, is there anyone out there that really just has that place in your heart?
You know, and this may sound cliched, but it's really my family, my parents more than anything else, right? They instilled in me early on the importance of work and the importance of responsibility to one's family and one's community. And that is all stuff that kind of came from my upbringing. Most of my entire life was basically spent in the church, and that's my upbringing. My family has started churches and been in churches and forever. That is just what my family does. So a lot of that is infused in me, but it's also the importance of like hard work. And I remember when I was in college, I would come home for the summer, and I had a job, and I was working for IBM at the time, and I was doing point of sale stuff, point of sale terminals in the summer. My father looked at me, he's like, "You have too much free time." And I'm like, "Do I really?" He's like, "You have too much free time. Made me go get another job." And I went and I sold shoes at night, and I worked on computers during the day. And that's what I did. And, I am the type of guy that loves being busy. I think that I perform better when I have a lot of work to do. And I think that bias for action, that desire to do a good job, that desire to look at oneself at the end of the day and know that you contributed something, I think that comes from my family and specifically from my parents.
All right, good stuff there. Actually, got a question here from Comics on the Mind. I don't know if you want to field that one there.
What channels? I actually don't watch a lot of other YouTubers, and I don't watch a lot of other YouTubers not because I don't want to support them. I don't watch them because if you watch too much of someone, those ideas and the things that they talk about, the things that they say, how they say them, how they view things, those things seep into you. And before you know it, those things are seeping into you, and then they're coming out of your mouth. And then before you know it, we all sound alike. And so I don't watch a lot of other YouTubers because of that. I would say that there are some YouTubers out there that are doing really, really good content, and I'm aware of them, and I use what they do as motivation to do more myself, and there were three of us that basically started channels around the same time, and the other two are much larger than me. Comic Tom started his channel around the same time as mine, as did Comics with Bueller. Both really fantastic guys that are doing really awesome stuff. Channels have blown up, putting out really good content, very different from one another, very different from me. And again, if we all listened and talked to one another all the time, we might all sound alike. And but all three of us occasionally talk to one another.
Mm-hmm.
I look at a guy like Jim Mint. Jim Mint is very different from me, but the way that the guy hustles, the things that he does, I find that to be inspiring, right? There is Silver Age Dave, who I love some Silver Age Dave. Jim's Comics up in Canada, love that guy. Used to watch ETA Nick, and I still do occasionally. Who else? Reaper Tate is someone. Luther Manning. There are a lot of YouTubers out there that I have awareness of and will occasionally dip in and check them out and kind of see what they're doing. But I try not to spend too much time with their content, because there is as I mentioned, there is a tendency to hear it and then have it come out. But then you also have an idea and you do it. And then what you realize is that was someone else's idea that kind of got in your head and you didn't even realize it. Now we're all created and sounding alike. And that's not good. It's not good for the comic book community, in my opinion.
All right. I mean, I got kind of a similar issue with it, but mine's also like an issue of time. I just don't have time. I mean, I would love to watch everyone's content, and I feel so bad because a lot of them support me really regular, and I try to get over the channel when I can, but there's just not enough hours in the day to watch everything, man.
But that's why you just dip in. They're doing a live stream. You dip in, you say hello.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to talk to a lot of people behind the scenes. I talk to a lot of people like behind the scenes offline via Instagram and stuff like that. So I can be out with my family and I can record a video for them, like clip and or text back and stuff like that. Like Travis and I talk not often. We maybe talk maybe once a month or something like that,
Hmm.
and that's just how we do it because I cannot go and watch all of his videos because I'm trying to do my own thing, and that's the downside, if you will, to your point of doing this stuff. Can't
Yeah.
watch it all, man.
No.
Can't watch it all as much as you would love to. And again, people are I think that this again just is my perception is that there is a lot of really good content out there on YouTube. And I think that is part of what enhances this hobby for a lot of people. We have the movies and the TV shows on streaming services. We have really good comics that are coming out. We have a really good comic book community, but then we also have a really good YouTube comic community as well. And there's an Instagram community, and there's a lot of overlap between them. And it's fantastic. You can literally talk to somebody in the world all day about comics. That's cool.
Yes, indeed. So, let's see, we gotta get you going here in a few minutes, so I'll try to make this real fast. You got time for a couple more questions,
Yeah,
or
let's do a
yeah?
couple more and then we'll go. My
All
kids
right.
are being quiet. I can barely hear them out there.
Treasure this moment, yes. But uh, now one of your big things that you actually proclaiming it proudly on your channel is your bodybuilding. Do you have a pro card?
Yes.
All right. When did you pick up your pro card?
2016.
Okay, wow, wow, a fairly fresh one. It's not the
Yeah,
easiest
yeah.
thing to get. People need to research how hard it is to get one of those things. How many shows did you have to win to be able to get that?
So I competed for 3 years as an amateur, and I basically did three shows a year because full-time job, a family, that kind of stuff. There's only so much you can do, right? So I did 3 shows a year as an amateur for 3 years. I won my pro card in my ninth show. Actually got second place. In that show. This guy, Otto Montgomery, actually beat me. And I got my pro card at midnight. That's how long the show was. It was midnight, and I'm stepping on stage to win my pro card. And then I won a couple of amateur shows. I went on as a pro to win one major show, which is the sword that you guys always see behind me and in my promo stuff.
Hmm.
That was the Tournament of Champions show down in LA. That was a show that I won in 2016, 2017. I can't remember. I'm off on my years, I think.
All right. So now, what is your opinion of the current divisions that are in bodybuilding? I mean, should it all just be one, do you think, or do you like the separation of like the aesthetic class and the was it the under 200 and all that?
Yeah.
Or do you like the all in one kind of encompassing thing?
So, I mean, we're all bodybuilders, right? We're all bodybuilders. It doesn't matter whether you're a bikini competitor or a physique competitor or whatever it happens to be. We're all bodybuilders. But because of some of the things that we've spoken about before about, the different body types that are out there, I think that there should be the divisions, right? Because I don't have 20 plus years to devote to a bodybuilding career in order to step on the Olympia stage as a bodybuilder, right? That would be like the Mr. Olympia.
Hmm.
So I'm very thankful, for example, that they essentially created a division for guys like me, which is the physique division. So I'm an IFBB pro in men's physique. And men's physique guys are not supposed to be the mass monsters at 300 pounds at 5'6" or 5'7", right? We are designed to be your average guy at the beach that's athletic and in good shape. So that's two divisions right there for men. Another for men is the classic physique. And so some people were asking about Arnold, right? So Arnold was a big dude with a lot of muscle, but he was not a mass monster, right? Arnold was 206 pounds or something like that on stage. I was literally 200 pounds on stage. So you have three divisions of men's competitors. You have your true bodybuilders, mass monsters. You have your step down from that, if you will, or away from that being the physique competitors. I'm sorry, the classic physique competitors. And then you have men's physique, which is what I did. And so those three divisions allow more people to actually come into the hobby or the sport of bodybuilding and be able to enjoy it. And there are some people that have come into men's physique and then progressed into either bodybuilding or progressed into classic physique. And so there is that evolution, which I think is fantastic for people. And there's corresponding divisions on the side for women as well. And there's even some other divisions. If you look at true bodybuilding, there's like the 212, which are like the smaller guys that weigh under 212 pounds. And then you have your 212 and above, which is like your traditional bodybuilding. So I think that all of these divisions that exist are important because it opens the hobby up to more people, the same way that comics have multiple genres and areas of opportunity for people to be able to enjoy.
So, what do you think, if you have one, what do you think your weakest body part is on
Oh,
stage?
legs for certain.
Gotta work on the
Well,
wheels somehow.
Well, right now, so I don't even compete anymore, right? So what
Hmm.
happened is, when we had our second kid, my wife looked at me and she's like, "I think you're done bodybuilding." And so it's really tough to look at your wife and be like, "No, I'm not done," right? Because bodybuilding for me was a hobby. It was something that I enjoyed, but it wasn't putting food on the table.
Hmm.
And so when she's like, "I need you to be here to help me raise these two kids," as I said, my hobby is raising two healthy, well-rounded children, right? And so it was not a hard decision for me to make. And so I've moved away from bodybuilding. I don't even work out at this point, and I need to get back to it. But I've taken the time, energy, and effort that I used to spend investing in myself and investing in building muscle. And I've taken that time and I've invested into my children and invested it into my channel. And you look at how my children are growing and developing, and you look at how my channel is growing and developing. And again, it was an easy decision for me to make.
Now, we can't have it be all negative. What do you think your strongest body part was?
Shoulders.
Shoulders, huh? Like
Yeah,
talking
by far, my
development. Yeah.
shoulders were incredible. It was the shoulders and then also my waist. My waist was a 29-inch waist at 200 pounds on stage. So if you look at it, with men's physique was about the V taper, right? So my
Hmm.
legs were a little undersized, but par for course, right? But my shoulders, my caps were massive, and then it all came down to this 29-inch waist, which is actually smaller than my wife's. So that the division of men's physique was designed for me
Hmm.
because I've always had big shoulders and I've always had a small waist, and it worked to my advantage in men's physique.
You can be like Sergio Olivia. He had, I think, 28-inch waist, and you saw how
He
wide
was
he was. So,
he was nice. He
but
was nice. I don't know how tall he was. I don't know how tall he
I don't
was.
think he was all that tall. But
Yeah, but that's a tiny waist, man.
yeah.
It's aesthetically pleasing when you see that on stage. And there's a lot of guys that wear waist trainers and stuff like that to cinch up their waist. I never did that. My waist is just naturally small. But yeah, I think probably shoulders and waist were the best. And I remember I was on stage one time and posing, and the guys were standing off to the side and they were like, "Where's his waist?" This is the stuff you can't hear from the audience, but if you're on stage, you can hear it. They're like, "Where's his waist? Look at that waist. It's a baby waist." That is one of the things that I actually miss about being on stage, is being in front of the audience, even though I'm an introvert, and the camaraderie of other competitors, especially backstage, was something that I kind of miss that.
All right. Well, I hear you there. Hey, two more questions. We're done, and the
Yeah.
next one should be a fast one. So, do you have a particular favorite Mr. Olympia year and person? Like, because my favorite is Samir Bannout. I think he was overall the perfect package for Mr. Olympia. I think he's still aesthetically pleasing. Would you have one that you could pick out of the air right now?
I don't, I'm a big fan, man, of like Lee Haney.
Mm-hmm.
I was always impressed with Lee Haney's physique. He was never the biggest guy, but he had an aesthetic look. He had a lot of muscle on his frame, but he was also a fantastic guy, right? A fantastic
Mm-hmm.
ambassador for the sport of bodybuilding. Even to this day, he still does things in the hobby, and I had a chance to meet him, and just a really humble guy. I think he had an incredible physique. Ronnie Coleman's physique, nothing but a peanut, just incredible. But that physique has cost him tremendously. I met him behind stage, and he was in a wheelchair,
It's sad. It's awful.
and
But
and that was hard to see. But you look at Lee Haney. Lee Haney is still getting around, no problem. Looks good, moves good. At least from what I can see.
mm-hmm.
two wonderful Mr. Olympias with great physiques, I would take Lee Haney any day over Ronnie Coleman. You know?
I mean, I don't think it's even a question because you could take Lee Haney's first win and his last win, and he still looks really similar. He still looks good.
Yep.
A lot of Ronnie's later wins are a little bit questionable. I mean,
It's too much meat on the bone, man. There was a lot of stuff going on. And you look at the impact of those things that he did on his body and the multiple surgeries on his spine, on his neck, and it's just it's tough. It's tough to say it was worth it.
Yeah.
You know?
And he won't stop though. That's the other thing. Doctors keep
Still
telling him to
lifts.
stop, and he keeps lifting heavy too.
Nothing but a peanut, and
Of
it'll
course,
cost him. And
double reps,
it's
800
sad.
pounds. So I mean, what do you
It
expect from the guys?
it hurt when I saw this guy in the wheelchair. Another guy that never got the title, Kai Green, man. Just
hmm
the feathering in that man's thighs, and that just sounds really, really awful. But the feathering, we're talking about body, the feathering in his thighs was impressive. Just incredible stuff, man. There's a lot of really just fantastic physiques out there that have been Mr. O. You talk about the 212 division, Flex
Flex
looked
Wheeler,
good,
yeah.
man. Flex Lewis, just nice down in your area, down in Florida area, right?
Well, I'm in West Virginia now, but
Oh, are you? Okay,
I used
there
to
you
live.
go. My bad.
I used to live.
There's no bodybuilders
Florida.
in West Virginia.
No,
Sorry.
no. We live corn sacks and stuff, but that's about it.
A lot of big boys, though, man.
Yeah, there's some good genetics here. Just got to actually get them in the gym, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, I've eaten up most of your afternoon, so I want to say I really appreciate you spending some time with us. Do you have anything that you want to say to people out there, people who watch your channel, or just people in general that you wanted to get out there and get a message to?
Yeah, man. First, I would say thank you for having me on the channel. I think when you originally approached me, I think it was like November, and
It's been a while.
it was bad. So I have to apologize for not being able to connect with you sooner than that. But thank you for understanding like my rationale behind it, right? And so it's a pleasure to finally be here. I wanted to spend the time because I enjoy trying to support people that are trying to do some things for the comic book community. So it's my pleasure to be here. Hopefully people in the chat actually enjoyed the chat, because I certainly enjoyed this. I think you asked some wonderful questions. I want to thank you for that exchange right there. That exchange of value, I think was fantastic. So I appreciate that. What I will say is if people like what they heard here, I would definitely encourage them to check me out on my own channel, Regie Collects, right here on YouTube.
All right, perfect, man. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you. I really appreciate you getting back to me. A lot of people could have said, I can't do the show and never got back to you. You actually sent me an email a couple days ago. I was very, very happy to see it. So
It never left my mind. You know what I'm saying? It was more like I just have to find the time to do it. You know what I'm saying? And when you're on lockdown and can't leave your house, you have nothing but time.
it's a really good time for this.
Right. So again, brother, I appreciate you opening your doors to me and allowing me to come on the channel, and thank you for the wonderful questions, because I think you definitely took some time to I do interviews, so I know it takes some time to do that. So I appreciate you.
I don't like going in blind. I don't want to waste your time as well as everybody else's. So, hey, we had some great chatting here today. I appreciate everyone who stuck with us. And like I said, Reggie's stuff, I'll have links to his site below. If somehow you aren't already subscribed to him, go out there and subscribe to him. Get out there and talk to people, be good to people. And I'll be interviewing more in the comics community before you know it. And I have some other people like Comic Fix Pros that I reached out to, and I'm getting some nibbles on. So hopefully I get some interviews with them in the future. So anyway, everyone be out there, be well, be safe. Reggie, thanks again for being here. Until next time, this is Genome and Reggie out.